is the personal beliefs in the consciousness, is it a learned behavior? Or, like, if you had a set of identical twins, how do I want to phrase this? Do you have to train a brain to like or dislike a subject? I guess. Like, if you're around,
No.
science and math all the time, do you become naturally acquainted with enjoying those subjects?
You can, but also the answer is no, because myself is an example of that.
Okay, and how so?
Yes, I was shown like Magic School Bus, Bill Nye, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I was shown it once, and that's all it took.
Yeah.
I wasn't
No,
nurtured, though. No one ever said... No one was like, hey, let's keep you around these things. I wasn't forced into it. I saw it once, and I wanted to be around it all the time.
No, I guess what I'm saying that, let's say you never were shown that, right? Never once.
Well, I got into space
But
before
let's
Magic
say you were
School
never
Bus,
once
though.
shown that, and you were around friends that did not like science, right?
So everyone else
And
in my
those
life?
friends influence what?
So literally every other person in my life?
I'm asking whether or not people can influence how you. I think so. Obviously, people can
Yes!
influence how you
I
think
answered the
and your
question!
perspective. I guess my perspective is, can they influence you enough such that you will never enjoy it? I don't
Never,
think
no.
so.
Any person could possibly
I
enjoy
guess.
something.
Do you? How do? Or I guess.
If
Do
you're
you think people
asking
have?
whether
Do you think
somebody can
people
be
have?
in...
What? No. Do you think people have uh, natural beliefs that they enjoy thinking? How do I want to phrase this?
Do you think people's brains are born in ways that allow them to enjoy certain subjects over other
No,
ones?
no, that's not what I'm. No,
Kind of what it sounds like.
that's not. But that's not what I want it to sound like. Um, do you think people's brains are wired in such a way that they prefer to think about one particular topic? Now, whether or not they will find this specific topic early in life or later in life is besides the point. But do you think that there is one, or I guess a small spectrum of subjects that you are naturally inclined, because of the chemical makeup of your brain, that you will naturally be inclined to enjoy over other things?
Yes. So
Yes.
personalities they develop over your entire life, but there's a
Yes, your
set...
personality is yes, but do you have a natural belief that if taught at any age, you will always enjoy this thing? You will never want to not think about this specific thing. Like, you'll have this sort of like category, like say science for us, right? You always want to think about.
Yes, let me
Yes.
finish and just
You
tell
you
you
think
what I'm...
people naturally have this?
Yes,
They don't find it.
yes. Listen, personalities develop over time. However,
Mm-hmm.
babies aren't just lumps of clay. They're lumps of clay with hard bits in them. There are parts that are just gonna kind of be that way unless you freaking pound the shit out of it and try and change it. Otherwise, babies are not perfect lumps of clay. They do have predisposition because all of our brains are different. And, it just so
They're also quite malleable.
yes, they're
There's
that's
a
what I'm
sense of
saying. Yes, they are malleable,
plasticity.
but they're not perfectly malleable. I mean, they are... They're
But
without coaxing, it may be easy for different babies to pick out different things because everybody's different. Everybody has different interests. It may
yes,
seem that most babies, you throw a shiny object at them, they're distracted. But some babies
Yes.
aren't interested in the shiny object. Why they're not interested, I don't know. Maybe they have autism. Because babies that have autism, they can't. They actually, something they noticed. If your baby has a hard time keeping eye contact, this is a baby for me. They have no idea what eye contact means. But if they don't ever seem interested in what's going on, they're kind of just always staring off into space. It's an indicator that they may have autism. And so these brains are just pre-programmed, pre-wired to be like this. Like, for example, I have ADD. I was more than likely born with this. I didn't develop it. I was just born with it. So my neurons were born to misfire. My genes say these neurons are going to misfire. So my brain is already wired differently than most of the population. And so I have a predisposition to whatever could come up of this. So yes, I absolutely believe people have a predisposition to like certain things. A case in point, myself. There was no reason, because I wasn't coaxed into doing one thing or the other. I think I watched Star Wars with my brother. And then I was like, wow, that's really cool. Space is cool. And then I watched Magic School Bus. They just showed the class. It was something to keep the kids busy. And I'm like, wow, space and all this stuff is really freaking cool. And then I myself, on my own free will, on my own fruition, was like, hey, I want space books. And then I just kept getting more and more interested. I myself, no one influenced me. I mean, yes, I was showing these things, but no one was like, you're going to like this. No, they're just like, I was just in the room. I was just there. You know? No one was like, you need to watch this. No, I was just there. And it just happened that I'm like, wow, this is really cool. I really enjoy this. And so, absolutely, my brain apparently was predisposed to really enjoy space. Yeah. So...
And so I guess on the flip side, I assume that it's safe to believe that there are certain things that you just see not your cup of tea, or things that are not worth your time to think and ponder about because of these other things that manifest in your thoughts more. And so I guess what I'm wondering though, so take philosophy, right? I think it's perfectly rational to think that there's people out there that just prefer not to let their mind wander in those directions.
Yes, I know. Like, most people in the world don't do that.
Yeah, and it's just, but...
Literally all my coworkers.
It seems weird, though, that never once does the mind naturally wander. Like, it seems like, the mind will wander there, and then eventually it's like, all right, that's enough, nope.
I think their minds wander, but it doesn't wander into those directions.
Naturally. You don't think it naturally wanders there?
It depends. So, see, that's the thing, right? The brain will always wander. See, so that's the thing, right? The brain will naturally wander, period, right?
Yes. But
see, the brain, when the brain wanders, that's complex thinking. That comes up much later in life. And by that point, some things are kind of baked in already.
Well, hold up. You're saying 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, their minds don't wander?
I would say my brain started to wander when I was probably 6th grade.
Exactly, but it did wander, though.
Right, in 6th grade. That's when your mind starts to think complexly. I think one of the first complex thoughts I ever thought was an interesting way to calculate birthdays. I
Wait, what?
It was an interesting way to calculate birthdays because I was thinking about my brother and how old he was. And I realized, because again, I was turning about 10 at the time. And I realized that except for when I am 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, so on and so forth, my second digit will always be higher than my brother's second digit by 1 digit. Always. Excluding the 9 days between our birthdays. 9 days. That's wrong. It's excluding the few days between our birth. 5 days between
How
our
many
birth.
years apart are you? 11? Or
8 years, 360 days. Sorry. The 5 days between our birthdays, excluding that gap.
so you're 8 years apart.
Almost 9.
Almost 9.
Excluding that 5-day gap. So
So
I realized I'm currently 22. That means my brother is 31.
yeah. And when you were 21, he was 30.
Yep. But when I was 20, he was 29. But when I was 20, he was 29.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, his last digit was larger than mine.
Yeah.
That is the
Oh, so this is the most complex thought you've ever had.
no, that was the first complex thought I ever had that I can remember
Oh.
and document, and that was in like 5th, 6th grade, somewhere in there. Because that is hard. For one thing, you have to think about another person and how their life relates to you. And then
No,
two,
I don't necessarily agree with that because see, here's the deal. When I was in kindergarten, I don't know why I remember this, but I do. Actually, no. I remember I was at daycare, and I don't remember if I was in kindergarten or not, but I stopped going to this daycare after it was either kindergarten or earlier because as soon as I went in first grade, I started going to daycare at the school, and this thought this thought has occurred more than once throughout my life, but because it will always reoccur. But one of the earlier times I remember this, I was at this daycare, and it was later in the day, like 5:30 or whatnot. But I specifically remember thinking, if I was thinking about when my dad would show up, right? It was like 5:30. It's like, man, it's getting kind of late, And then you see a car pull up, right? But the thing is, as a kid, you know what your father's cars look like, right? And you're always looking for that car, right? Well, I used to always, wonder, let's say hypothetically, this car that pulled up was his car. Let's say this was another parent's car that pulled up, right? And I used to always think about, like, it still would not be him, So there could be some other kid with another parent driving this same exact car. And I
that's
always
not a
used to come to the
complex thought.
conclusion, what?
That's not a complex thought.
Hang on, I was 5 at the time, okay?
Right,
But
but I'm talking complex thoughts, specifically complex thoughts. That's
I
when
was
your mind
5.
wanders.
No, but I'm saying no. Yeah, this is me talking about my mind wandering now,
Okay,
right?
we're
So basically, I was just constantly thinking, about how if you have this car that pulls up, but it's not actually your parents' car, right? And I don't even know where I'm trying to go with this, but um,
I
it was
think
just one of these things where like my mind would just kind of wander upon thinking about this to where it just felt like it was something deeper behind it, like some deeper meaning behind it.
I don't think that was a complex thought. I think that was another because you said it was kindergarten, so there's a
Or earlier.
developmental point there in your brain in which you stop thinking about in terms of me and start thinking about in terms of other people. Other people exist. Other people have feelings. That happens in
Well, what about
kindergarten.
like thinking about like? Fine. What about this? Have you ever wondered? Like looking at a block of items. As kids, you like stacking up things, right? I always used to try, and I eventually did come up with. There is a formula. I don't know if it's. I eventually made a formula for this, but like how as kids you always like stacking things up, right? I always used to wonder if I knew the total sum of objects I had, how many could I stack at the bottom to have a perfect pyramid? Have you ever done that? Like, let's say you're given a whole bunch
Oh
of
yeah,
dominoes, right?
I figured that out when I was a kid too.
What?
I did that too when I was a kid. That's just math.
Yeah, but you don't think that's a complex thought. I guess how do you define a complex thought?
Well, let's take it to Google. God damn it. Oh my god. So yeah, you need to be so complex thought is the ability to interconnect different dimensions of reality. Basically, when you're so I remember when I was in middle school, they taught us about inference, context clues.
Well, yeah, you're reading books.
Right.
Is that complex thought?
That's complex thought. Because before, your brain physically cannot understand. What?
No, they told you that in elementary school. You read a book and they're like, what do you think will happen next?
I don't remember them ever asking that in elementary school.
They did that in freaking kindergarten. I had teachers that you'd read a book. They'd stop where they're reading and they'd say, I want you to come up with ideas. What do you think will happen next?
But hold on, wait a minute. Yes, okay, it does come back. But right? They never bothered to tell you whether you were right or wrong.
What?
That was a creativity exercise. That was not a complex thinking exercise. They wanted to see.
How do you define complex thought?
Huh?
Then how do you find complex thought in this sense?
This is. I'm thinking complexly as in logically. What will logically come next?
Yes, and they did that. So like, did you ever have teachers?
No, those were creative. They were just wanting to know. They were just wanting you to think. They were trying. Yeah, but they
never argued with you.
They never argued with us. They were kindergarten teachers. They just asked us. So why do you think that's going to happen?
Had a teacher.
They never told us.
Hang on. Listen. You never, because I remember this in elementary school. We'd read a book. She'd read a book aloud, right? And as you get into the climax, she'd ask, "What do you think what's going to happen next?" And write down all these possibilities on the whiteboard, and then she'd ask us to think about them, right? Now, and you'd have to explain yourself. Explain why you think this stuff. You can't just be spitting stuff out. Explain it. Explain your reasoning and why. And the stuff that did not make sense, she'd cross it out. And then she'd circle, the things that are most likely to happen, and then she'd continue reading. She never did that with you?
Not that I remember. Probably didn't give two craps about it. Because I always thought it was a creativity exercise.
Right? That fits the definition, right? Asking you to explain your reasoning, explain your thought. Yeah, sure, you could say whatever the hell you want. What was happening in the book, but why? Why do you think this will happen? What are some things that you have heard throughout the book that give justice to this response of how you think the author wants this book to end? You never once had to me that fits the definition. Now, whether or not you have teachers do this, to me that fits the definition, right? And this would have been like 3rd grade or whatever, elementary school.
That's probably, but that's not, I think those are probably coaxed though, right?
What?
Because I think that's probably like coaxed complex thought though, right? It's not like kids, but kids aren't going to go and just naturally do that.
Do what?
Think about what's going to happen next. That's not a. That's
yeah, they do. No, that's a skill that you're trying to build.
Right.
They're trying to build that skill.
Right. So complex thought happens later on Okay, let me rephrase this. Free complex thought, as in uncoaxed by a teacher or a parent or whatever. You did it on your own. That happens in 6th grade. Now your brain is physically able to actually do it efficiently and effectively.
It's hard to say though, because well, one, it's so long ago I don't remember, but two, a lot of those complex thoughts, like for example, one specific one I have is so there was this teacher. We were learning about heritage school, right? And there was this picture of this teacher, writing, or like this picture of this woman writing, right? And the teacher asked, and there was a question on like a test or whatever, and the question was, why did this person not become a teacher or whatever, or why could she not become a teacher? And a lot of kids, put that, she was old or whatever, because it was like an older lady. But women were allowed to teach back then in the 1800s. I don't know if anyone actually got this question right. I didn't get it right. But the answer was, it was a picture of her, mind you. The answer was because she was writing with her left hand. You had to be very, I don't know the word,
yeah, that's definitely the definition.
Observant.
Yes.
You had to be very observant and be willing to think outside the box and notice that she was writing with her left hand to be able to realize that, she could not become a teacher at that time because they only wanted teachers that were writing with their right hand. So it required, being very observant, but also being able to pull out outside clues, things that you had learned. You had learned because you had learned that teachers were allowed to teach with their left hand.
Yeah,
you had learned
that's
that.
complex thought. That is as complex gets. They asked children to do this? I wouldn't expect a high schooler to pick up on that.
I was asked this question in 4th grade. How I remember this, I don't know. There's a lot of
it's probably because you're like, huh? Your brain was probably bewildered by it. It's probably like, what?
Yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, that was a question. I don't. Personally, it was like a test question. Personally, it was like a quiz or whatever we had.
Personally, I wouldn't expect high schoolers to pick up on that.
Yeah. No, it's
I think most of the population can't. I think most of the population in the U.S. wouldn't be able to pick up on that.
Yeah.
Straight up, I have that little hope in humanity that I think most people could not pick up on that. Hell, I probably wouldn't even pick up on that. I probably wouldn't, because I probably wouldn't be fucking paying attention to the photo. It's a photo. It's not important to the story.
But it said, look at this photo. Why could this woman not teach?
Oh.
And I think I put because she was old too. She was old, just retired. I don't know. I was like, I don't see what's wrong with her. And then the teacher, after everyone had turned in the assignment, she pointed out. So a lot of people got. I don't know if anyone got it right. I'll just say a lot of you got this question wrong. Look at this question very closely. Look at what hand is she writing with. I was like, oh. She's writing with her left hand.
That's mean.
Yeah.
That's mean. That's a
4th grade.
No. But again, you were coaxed.
Yeah. So your answer was free complex thought.
Yes. Obviously, they were teaching us how to do complex.
Well, I think it's fair to say that it comes in stages, right? Because I think that there's probably going to be, if you really thought about it, maybe one example, that came early in life, right? Like one example, it comes in stages, periods, we're going to have a short burst, and I don't care how complex it is, but you'll have a short burst, and however long you ponder on it determines how close you are to the next stage, right? To have this stuff that'll ponder into your brain will be like, and then if you immediately get lost and just forget about it, then that means you still have a ways to go, right?
So I
But if you
think
start, but I
maybe
think
maybe
it's
it's
the longer. I
self-aware.
think the longer that you choose to think and ponder, like I gotta figure this out. Like I can't with this. Like I gotta figure this out, right? The longer you choose to think about something, the closer and closer you are to that stage of your prefrontal cortex working. Because
So
eventually you
what
just get
if?
to the point. It's like a muscle, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's a
yeah, yeah,
muscle,
yeah.
like
No, no, I got it. I got it. I don't need more explaining. I I think it's maybe self-aware complex thinking. So obviously the birthday thing, I had no idea it was complex thinking. I didn't know what complex thinking was. But now when I think back to how when it happens, because like obviously people have those thoughts and people's minds begin to freely
wander.
wander in sixth grade, or
Well, yeah,
some
it's
people are
think about
later
it
than
this way,
that.
right? You have neurons there that are starting to fire,
Right.
or
But
or you have thoughts that need those, or you have a thought that occurs in your mind and requires those neurons to fire. But because that brain is not fully developed, you don't have enough neurons, the capacity to think about this for a long duration of time. And so there'll be some short bursts, some short fires that occur in that region of the brain. But because it's not fully developed, the duration of time upon which you'd be able to think about it would be quite short. And it's like a muscle that needs to grow and it needs to be constantly stimulated. But of course, it takes later in life before it really starts to jumpstart and kickstart and become fully developed to where it can handle being more exercised all the time, right?
right,
Like
right. But
take like the Rock for example,
I,
right?
I,
Like you can't go out and exercise like the Rock, right? You need to gradually ease up to those levels,
right.
and it takes until about the age of 12, I'd say, when you're ready to start exercising that part more regularly.
Right, right, right. But I don't care about that. What I'm talking about is that because everybody has, well, I shouldn't say everybody, most people have the ability to do complex thought. But I was thinking
Yeah.
about like the SPED kids, right? And I
Uh huh.
remember when they were trying to teach them algebra.
Yeah.
These people, they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
They couldn't do it. They're behind their grade. The average human should be able to do it by now, but they can't. But the thing is, though, they probably were already doing complex thoughts, and they didn't even know it. They just weren't utilizing it because their brain didn't know how to utilize it. It's possible the resources are there, just either A, there's not enough of it, or B,
Mm-hmm.
the rest of the brain is so underdeveloped that it couldn't utilize it even if it wanted to. It,
Yeah.
it could be either one, or the whole brain could just be completely just junk, and that not essentially it's junk. Nobody's junk, but it's just not developed right, and it just cannot do these processes. It cannot do these thoughts. It's just not efficient. They just can't do it. It's too much, but it just can't do it to the point where it just can't. It can do it, just not efficiently. So they can make inferences. They could probably do basic algebra. Well,
Is
yeah.
it well I guess
I shouldn't say they should be able to do basic. I still don't
maybe
think they
these
can do
are
basic algebra.
anomalies, but is it possible that a kid could be put in SPED because of language? They don't have the ability to express their thoughts in a meaningful way, but they are just gifted, right? They can just think
No,
about like hand them
not
a
these
piece of
kids.
paper and they can write their stuff down, right?
I
Is
mean,
that it? Is that
it's possible there are kids like that. Not these
mhm.
kids.
Not these kids?
No,
These kids, you could hand them a piece of paper and they still don't get it.
no, that's straight up what happened.
Like math or whatever, right?
I'm sitting there, and I'm in algebra.
Uh-huh.
Okay, as an eighth grader, so I'm
Yeah.
ahead of the curve. They're in math 8.
That was normal.
What?
Algebra as an eighth grader.
No, normal is pre-algebra.
Oh.
They're in math.
Maybe Lincoln was different. I don't know. I just remember a lot of kids, at least how I remember it, you took pre-algebra, 7th grade, algebra, 8th grade, geometry, ninth, algebra 2, and sophomore, pre-cal, junior year, and then senior year, you either took statistics or calculus. And that was like a lot of people.
It may have seemed
Statistics or
like
calculus.
maybe that's
Or
because
they took
maybe that's because you were
college
in that
algebra.
group and you weren't really aware of what was going on with the rest of the group, or maybe it's
That's
because
possible.
maybe it's because your school just they were just like sink or swim, so they throw them in the pre-algebra whether they're actually ready for that or not.
Because then there was also college algebra too, and I don't
College,
think that was like
we
equivalent to
had
like
college algebra. I never understood that course.
I think it's equivalent to like Math 100, right?
I have
At
no
your
idea. It was
yeah, I don't
it was
know. I
SEC
assume that's a
algebra.
class. I
No
assume that's a
idea.
class. I don't know.
I don't know either.
I used to call that class AP Shapes and Colors.
Oh, it's absolutely AP shapes and colors because I know people that are taking that class and they show me their homework or like the teacher would show us the homework he assigned and I'm like, I did this in advanced algebra 3 years ago because I'm in calculus at this point. I'm like, I did this in advanced algebra
Yeah.
3 years ago. Like what? Anyways, so this kid's in math 8, right? So he's already like 2 math courses behind me. Possibly 3 if he has to take math 9. And I think he ended up having to take math 9. Yeah, we had a math 9.
Yeah. I don't. I
Whoa.
mean,
And which
we might have had that. I don't know what they teach though.
they had math. I don't know what they taught in math 9. We had math 9 and pre-geometry. I hated pre-geometry, and I'll talk about it in a minute.
Pre-geometry? But you took pre-geometry? What is pre-geometry?
I'll talk about it, but it's so they can graduate on time.
Uh-huh.
Because if you take math 9, you're behind.
Yeah.
So to graduate on time, if you end up in math 9, you're gonna have to at one point during your high school career take 2 math classes at once. Because to graduate, you need to take algebra, geometry, and pre-calculus.
You know, for some reason,
Oh, sorry, not pre-calculus, advanced algebra.
For some reason, I seem to remember vaguely a course where I don't know if this is like another school or maybe this was my school that did this, but there was a course that you could take where it was algebra and geometry taught in the span of 1 year. So it was like an ultra long algebra class. You know, it was structured to be taught in one semester, and then geometry would be taught in the second semester. So it almost like taking 2 hours of math. So it's an extra long course, such that they can teach you all the material twice as fast. So you finish algebra in one semester, and then take geometry the next semester. I seem to remember it, but I think that might have been like Southwest, because I know Southwest could have easily gotten away with that, because at Southwest they had 90-minute schedules or something like that. Like the kids would take 4 classes a semester, but they'd be like 90 minutes long.
Oh, block scheduling.
Block schedule, is that what you call it? Yeah.
That's
And
yeah.
I think there was a course where it was like algebra one semester, geometry the next semester, but it was intended for kids that needed to catch up.
Yeah, well, these kids that take math 9, they're screwed because they have to take I think pre-algebra the next year. And pre-geometry so they can be ready. Anyways, I think they take algebra and pre-geometry at the same time. That way they're ready to take. I don't remember how it worked. I honest to God, I don't.
What do they teach in pre-geometry?
So we'll get back to this kid though. This kid, they threw an X into the equation to solve for it. Heck, I don't think there was even that. I think it was literally just they were talking about milk cartons, and I don't remember. Point is, this kid sat there and just stared at it, and they're like, "Come on, you do this. What do you have left? What is X?" And he's like, "Why is there an X?" And it's like, you have to solve for it. And he's like, I don't know. And it's just like they're telling him how to do it, and he just can't. There's literal smoke coming out of his ears, and I'm like, oh my god.
I think you need to start basic, like x equals 1.
I don't
Like,
remember what it was, but
start
it
as
was
simple as possible.
it was as simple as possible. It was like 1 minus x equals 2.
And then you take one more step, right? X plus 1 equals 2, right? I just told you x equals 1. Now plug in 1. 1 plus 1 equals 2. And so basically you're telling them what x equals and how to solve for it.
I don't think they could do
I
it.
think it'd be easier to. Maybe for this kid, it'd be easier to work forwards, where they can see the problem written out and then work backwards.
I think they probably didn't. He still couldn't solve it. Hell, they would give them the answers for tests, and they'd still write down the wrong answers. And that's not an exaggeration.
I seem to remember a story. I think it was John Baylor, the person who started the ACT prep class, or he had an ACT prep class, right?
He started the ACT.
Have you heard of him? What?
He invented it, started it.
Yeah, John Baylor. Anyways, there's a story that supposedly he had these 3 kids that were they wanted to play football, right? They were athletically gifted, but
They're stupid.
school wise, yeah, they're not the brightest. And they went to his class, they paid the money, and they were still struggling. And the ACT was coming up, they're running out of time. And it's just like, shit, we need them to pass. I think they needed a 19 to get into the school they wanted to. And it's like, just write down C for every single answer. Don't do anything else. Just write down C. They did that. They got a 19. And I think it was from this test that the ACT caught on. Now you can't do this anymore. Maybe they got a 20 or something. But they got into school just putting C for one answer. And then, because John Baylor's the guy, like how all people were extremely successful. They paid his money to take this course, and these people, they just could not do it. They told him to just put C, and it freaking worked.
Well, anyways, so I remember, so they would have like matching part questions or whatever, and they would tell them match the square to the square, the triangle to the triangle, the circle to the circle, so on and so forth. Match the freaking shapes, right? So you had you had words on one side, definitions on the other. All they had to do was match the square to the square. They don't even have to read the damn crap. They just have to match a square to a square. These schmucks still couldn't do it. Either it's A, they just couldn't read, they just didn't read the instructions, or A, they didn't care. They thought, no, that doesn't seem right. I don't know how. Or, the best part, oh my god. This happened to me in science class. I was given one of their tests. Not as heavily...
By accident or on purpose? Or...
So I had an IEP.
What?
I had an IEP. Individualized educational experience. Whatever. I don't know what IEP. I don't know. I don't know what it stood for. Anyways, because I had AD, and so I qualified to have like modified tests or whatever. But I didn't need them. If I needed them, it was going to be in reading and algebra, not algebra, reading and English. They gave it to me in my favorite courses, science and social studies. The last 2 courses I need modified tests for.
Oh, you had it in math too?
No, I didn't get it in math.
Oh.
I was able to use a calculator.
Oh.
That was their modification. Thank God, because it would have taken me 8 years to do all those algebra tests. Because I didn't know my times tables. I couldn't add worth of crap. But I knew how to do it. That's kind of me my entire, that's still kind of me. Like, I know how to do it. I just can't actually do the math. Anyways, so so in science class, they would give me this test, and I'm like, I don't need this, but thanks. And it's just super easy. But mine wasn't as heavily as modified. Mine only had one of the questions crossed out, one of the answers crossed out. Theirs had, so it's a multiple choice question, four possible answers. They crossed out they crossed out half of them. They crossed out the two most difficult ones, left with the correct answer and the most outrageous answer, and they still would get them wrong.
Wait, you had this test?
No. I had the one where they crossed out one of the four.
Oh, they crossed out one.
And I was like, and they'd always crossed out the one that was the one that I was always kind of unsure about. So it was super easy. It required no thought whatsoever because the other two were just completely...
Yeah, because usually they do that. I guess my teachers, you have two answers that are just not even close, or like they're kind of right, but the other two are just way better. And the other two that are way better, there's always one that's more right, as they call it. There's always the more right answer, and I hated those.
Well, in science and
which one is more right?
Science and
yes, I suppose this one, if you think about it like this, because then they'd be like, "You're overthinking it. It's this one." They're like, well, they won't tell you it's this one, but like, you're wrong. You're overthinking it.
Well, science and history, these teachers
usually I was good that you're wrong. It's the other one. Whenever they say that you're overthinking it, it's the other one.
Science and history was always fun. Because I would like laugh and giggle. Because I'd read the question and I'm like, okay, it's this. And I go to read the choices. And I'd laugh because one of the choices was just completely utter stupid.
Where to hide during a lightning storm? Under a tree? Well, not under a tree, a swimming pool, in a ditch, or in a basement.
No, like, not that. It was more obvious this. Who signed the Declaration of Independence? John Adams, Lady Gaga. Actually, it wasn't that ridiculous. It was...
But people that weren't even in that time period?
Yes. Actually, yes, it was those. So it would be like, who declared war, who did the U.S. drop nukes on? Japan? Italy?
Tuvalu.
Germany?
Tuvalu.
Or Botswana?
Tuvalu.
Or yeah, some other country that's just like, what? Just like, what?
What?
Botswana?
Backyard.
Botswana? Why the hell is Botswana out here? Something like that. Well, anyways.
Why the hell is Japan on here?
Why is Japan? No, those kids. So those kids' tests, they would have Germany and Italy crossed out, and they're left with Japan and Botswana. And they'd be like, why is
Japan?
And they'd still pick Botswana.
Botswana.
Like, what? No.
Then you picked the weird one. I did that. So have you ever done the strategy where whenever you pick the answer that you don't recognize? Because, like, for science test, right? If you're given a question, it's like,
yeah,
well, I know what this means, and what I know this means is not really what this means. So it's like associate definitions, right? It's like, I don't know what this word means, and if I knew the answer to this question, I think I'd recognize one of these answers. So then you pick the one that you don't know.
So
I've done that before.
So we did.
And sometimes it works. Sometimes it works because if you know the definition of all three other words and you don't know the definition of the one, well, then it's like, well, maybe this is the definition of this one. And it's usually, well, it's either yes, that is right, or no, it's like this other definition can be written in this sort of way.
So did I ever...